1951. A bedroom in Louisville in cedar from the closet fills the air. A woman smooths a cotton dress that costs $3 at Sears. Cool fabric under her fingers. 4 dresses, and she looks like she owns 40. What she knew was buried so an industry worth billions could replace it. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly how she did it and why you were never told. Mid-century American women did not have bigger closets. They did not have secret tailors or hidden money. They had knowledge, and that knowledge has been commercially dismantled piece by piece over the last 60 years. This video opens with something that has never been covered on this channel before, a deep look at the 1950s dresses that disappeared from modern wardrobes. Not the styles, not the patterns, the construction itself, the engineering inside the fabric that made a $3 dress look like it was cut for one woman and one woman only. That section comes first because it changes how you see everything that follows. And what follows is a collection of the most powerful fashion wisdom this channel has ever assembled. We begin with forgotten fashion tricks from the 1960s that still work today. Then comes the centerpiece, the one that changed more of you than any video on this channel. Vanished fashion tricks that still make you look elegant on any budget. That video proves something that the modern fashion industry does not want proven. That elegance was never about price. It was about practice. And millions of you watched it and remembered what your mothers already knew. After that, we move into 25 forgotten fashion rules every 1950s woman was judged by. And we close with the vanished rules 1950s women followed to keep their husbands attracted. Every one of these was free. Every one of them worked, and not one of them required a single product you had to buy. In the 1940s and 50s, American manufacturers built day dresses with interior boning, princess seaming, and engineered darts that flattered dozens of body shapes without alteration. One dress from Sears fit like it was custom made. A 1956 survey by the American Institute of Men's and Boys Wear found the average woman owned fewer than 9 dresses, yet reported high wardrobe satisfaction. When offshore production expanded, interior construction was the first cost eliminated because it required skilled labor. The industry buried a philosophy of dressmaking to sell 5 disposable garments where 1 good dress used to stand. That was not a failure of fashion, that was a business decision. And the dress was only the outermost layer of a system that went far deeper than fabric. A kitchen in Omaha, Nebraska. Saturday morning, 1953. The linoleum is cool and the radio plays low from the counter. A woman stands at the hallway mirror in a cotton slip and checks the line of her shoulders before she reaches for a single dress hanging on the back of the bedroom door. She does not own a walk-in closet. She does not subscribe to a styling service. She does not scroll through 400 options on a screen at midnight wondering why nothing fits. She owns a handful of garments, and every one of them makes her look like she just stepped out of a photograph. The smell of ivory soap on her skin, the click of a small brooch at the collar, the soft weight of a structured hem brushing just below the knee. These women move through their mornings with a kind of quiet certainty that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with a set of inherited practices that modern commerce has spent decades prying out of ordinary households. What you are about to see is not a list of tips, it is a discipline. A complete system of knowledge that once lived in every home in America and was replaced item by item with products that cost more and do less.
Number 20. The slip under every dress. No woman in the 1960s would have been caught dead without a slip under her dress. Full slip or half slip, it was as essential as the dress itself. Vanity Fair, Barbizon, Vassarette. A nylon full slip from Sears cost $2.99 in 1964. The whisper of nylon against a cotton lining. The tiny metal slides on the straps that adjusted with a fingernail. It eliminated static cling. It prevented show-through in sunlight. It made every dress hang the way the pattern intended. White, nude, black. one of each in the top dresser drawer, folded flat. A slip was not underwear. It was architecture. The average American woman now owns over 100 pieces of clothing, and not one of them is a slip. Her grandmother owned 12 garments and wore a slip under every one. Number 19. Clear nail polish on a stocking run. The moment a run started in a pair of stockings, a woman reached for clear nail polish. She painted a small dot at both ends of the tear, and the run stopped cold. Q-Tex or Revlon Clear Coat, 15 cents a bottle. A pair of Hanes seamless stockings cost $1.35. She balanced her ankle on her knee and dabbed both ends of the run. She blew on it for 30 seconds. Some women kept a bottle in the desk drawer at work, another in the glove compartment, another in the handbag. 3 bottles were stationed across her daily life like sentinels. She did not throw them away. She fixed them in 30 seconds. That instinct, fix it before you replace it, was not thrift. It was how she was raised. Number 18. The Boar Bristle Clothing Brush. Every household had a clothing brush. They usually hung on a hook inside the closet door. Coats, suits, wool skirts, everything got brushed before it went back on the hanger. Brands like Kent of England or Fuller Brush Company were common. Natural boar bristle on a walnut handle. Firm downward strokes from shoulder to hem removed lint, dust, and surface soil, all gone in 30 seconds. The faint smell of lanolin released from the wool. Her husband's suit jacket was brushed every Sunday night before it was hung for Monday. A wool coat brushed daily lasted 10 years. Dry cleaning now runs $12 to $15 a visit. Her grandmother's brush cost less than one trip and often made the trip unnecessary. Number 17. Vinegar in the rinse water to set colors. Before washing a new colored garment for the first time, women would soak it in cold water with a cup of white vinegar. The vinegar locked the dye into the fiber. Use household Heinz white vinegar. 19 cents a bottle. Use the kitchen sink or a galvanized wash tub and soak for 30 minutes. The water sometimes turned faintly pink or blue as excess dye released. After that single soak, the garment held its color through dozens of washes. A red cotton blouse stayed red. A navy skirt stayed navy. She did not need color-safe detergent at $4 a bottle. She needed vinegar, cold water, and 30 minutes of patience. The industry pretends the solution does not exist. Number 16. Faultless spray starch for crisp collars and cuffs. Collars and cuffs were starch stiff. A sharp crease at the collar meant you were put together. A soft collar meant you were not paying attention. Faultless or Niagara spray starch cost 39 cents a can. The hiss of the aerosol. The collar laid flat on the ironing board, a burst from 6 inches away. The iron pressed down and steam rose. The cotton went rigid. The crease could cut paper. Father's 5 work shirts were done on Sunday evening. They were hung on wire hangers on the back of the bedroom door. A man walked into work Monday morning, and his collar stood at attention. That was not his doing. That was a woman standing at an ironing board on a Sunday night. That collar was a love letter no one ever read. These first 5 tricks share something in common. Not one required a store or an appointment or a professional. They were kitchen counter fixes and Sunday evening rituals. The knowledge traveled in a straight line from mother to daughter. It never needed a receipt. Number 15. Dress shields. They were crescent-shaped fabric pads that snapped or pinned inside the underarm of a dress. They absorbed perspiration and prevented stains before they ever started. Kleinerts had been making them since 1869, 59 cents a pair at the 5 and dime. Some women sewed them permanently into their best dresses. The snap fastener clicked softly into place. She checked them before leaving the house the way she checked her lipstick. The modern equivalent is a $38 sweat-proof undershirt sold online. The 60s solution was a 59-cent cotton pad and a safety pin. Number 14. A safety razor to remove sweater pills. When a wool sweater developed pills, she laid it flat and shaved them off with a single-edge safety razor. A gem or treat, single-edge blade, 5 cents. The sweater was spread flat on the kitchen table, short, light strokes in one direction. She worked section by section, sleeve by sleeve. She held the fabric taut with her other hand. The sweater underneath looked brand new. Today, there is a $25 electric fabric shaver that does the same job with less precision. The blade cost a nickel. It required the one thing no gadget can replicate: a careful hand. Number 13. Rit dye to bring faded clothes back to life. When a black dress faded to charcoal, she bought a packet of Rit dye and re-dyed it on the kitchen stove. Rit all-purpose dye, 25 cents a packet. A large enamel pot filled with hot water. The garment went in. She stirred it slowly with a wooden spoon for 20 minutes. The kitchen smelled of dye and steam. She rinsed in cold water until it ran clear. By morning, that faded black dress was jet black again. America now sends over 11 million tons of textile waste to landfills every single year. That is roughly 81 pounds per person in the country. Her grandmother discarded almost nothing. She dyed it, and it came back. Number 12. Iron-on hem tape. When a hem came undone or a skirt needed shortening, women used a strip of fusible hem tape. No needle, no thread, just an iron. Stitch witchery or wonder web. About 50 cents. She folded the hem to the desired length, slipped the tape inside the fold, laid a damp pressing cloth over the top, and pressed the iron down for 10 seconds. The hem held firm, invisible from the outside. Done in 2 minutes. A tailor charged $3 to hem a skirt in 1965. The tape cost 50 cents and took 2 minutes. She did not outsource what her hands could do. Number 11. Cedar blocks and lavender sachets. Against moths. Wool garments stored for summer went into closets lined with red cedar blocks, or into small muslin bags filled with dried lavender. Red cedar blocks came from the hardware store, 10 cents each. The sharp, clean smell of cedar when the closet door opened in September. Some women grew lavender along the back fence and dried it in the kitchen. The sachets were tucked between folded sweaters, and the whole drawer smelled like a grandmother's house. Moths stayed away. Wool survived the summer without a single hole. A cedar block lasted years. She sanded it lightly when the scent faded, and it came back strong as the first day. The mothball replaced it, toxic, chemical, reeking. The cedar was always better. Number 10. One silk scarf, 12 ways. A woman in the 1960s could take a single silk scarf and wear it a dozen different ways: at the neck, in the hair, on the handbag, as a belt, as a headband. A 27-inch square from the department store counter, $1.50 to $2. Or if she saved, a Vera Newman with a little ladybug signature in the corner. The silk was cool between the fingers. McCall's and Good Housekeeping printed scarf-tying diagrams every spring. Women clipped them out and tucked them in the dresser drawer. One scarf did the work of 6 accessories. She did not need a new piece of jewelry for every outfit. She needed imagination and 2 hands. Number 9. Shoe trees and weekly shoe care. Good shoes were maintained. Cedar shoe trees went in every night. Polish was applied weekly. Heels were replaced at the cobbler before they wore down to the nail. Kiwi shoe polish cost 25 cents a tin. Newspaper was spread on the kitchen floor. The tin popped open with a coin edge. That waxy smell. A cotton rag worked in small circles over the leather. A horsehair brush raised the shine. A good pair of leather pumps cost $8 at Tom McCann in 1962. With care, they lasted 5 years. She did not buy shoes to keep up with trends. She bought shoes to walk through her life. She cared for them the way she cared for everything, with her own 2 hands. Number 8. The belt that changed everything. One good belt could transform a boxy shift dress into a fitted silhouette. Women used belts not as decoration, but as tailoring. A 1-inch leather belt in black or cognac, or a wider elastic cinch belt in a bright color. She slipped it around the waist of an A-line shift, and suddenly the dress had shape. She could take the same dress from the office to dinner just by switching the belt. The metal buckle clicked. The silhouette changed entirely. Fast fashion now sells 20 different dress silhouettes. She owned 3 dresses and a belt. The belt did what 20 dresses could not. Number 7. White gloves and the glove rule. Through the early and mid-1960s, white cotton gloves were standard for church, for shopping downtown, for any occasion that required looking finished. Founds or Kaiser brand, $1 a pair at J.C. Penney. The soft stretch as she pulled them on, finger by finger. The little pearl button at the wrist. Jackie Kennedy wore them to the inauguration, and every woman in America already owned 3 pairs. Washed by hand in the bathroom sink with ivory soap. Slightly stiff by morning. Softened again on the hands. The gloves were not about formality. They were about completion. The outfit ended at the fingertips. Nothing left to chance. That level of intention has no modern equivalent. Number 6. The costume jewelry brooch. One brooch could turn a plain dress into an outfit. Women pinned them at the collar, at the waist, on a hat, on a coat lapel. Trifari. Sarah Coventry, Monet. A rhinestone starburst or a gold tone leaf, the weight of it in the palm, the sharp pin on the clasp. She pinned it at the neckline of a black shift dress, and the whole thing went from plain to polished in 2 seconds. Some brooches were inherited. A mother's brooch became a daughter's brooch, became a granddaughter's brooch. A brooch was not an accessory. It was a signature. And when her daughter wore it 30 years later, it said something about where she came from. Number 5. The pressing cloth and the art of proper ironing, a damp cotton cloth placed between the iron and the garment. Every woman in the 1960s knew that an iron never touched good fabric directly. A flour sack cloth or a square cut from an old cotton bedsheet dampened under the faucet and wrung out. The iron pressed down, steam rose, and the fabric underneath came out smooth with body, not the dead flat shine of a direct iron. The pressing cloth protected silk from scorching, and it protected wool from going glossy. 30 seconds added per garment. 30 seconds of care. That was what separated a garment that lasted a year from one that lasted a decade. She knew the difference because her mother taught her. Number 4. The girdle. Before a woman put on her dress, she put on her girdle, not for vanity, for structure. The foundation that the entire silhouette was built on. Playtex or maiden form, $4 to $8. The firm elastic panels. The garters that clipped to stockings with small metal clasps. Everything sat differently once it was on. The skirt hung straight, the blouse stayed tucked. Clothes in the 60s were cut to fit over a girdle. Without one, nothing hung the way it was supposed to. The girdle is gone now. In its place is a $60 piece of shapewear marketed as empowerment. Her grandmother called it a girdle and spent $5. The function is identical. The only thing that changed was the name and the markup. Number 3. Mending and darning as a way of life. A loose button was sewn back on before dinner. A torn seam was mended that evening. A hole in a sock was darned using a wooden darning egg and a needle. Nothing left the house damaged. The sewing basket sat beside the armchair. It could be a wicker basket or a round tin cookie box, spools of thread in black, white, navy, and brown. A tomato-shaped pincushion. She stretched the sock over the darning egg and wove the needle back and forth across the hole. A button was sewn back on in 4 passes. She bit the thread and snapped it clean. Mending was not a chore. It was a declaration. This is mine. It is worth my time. It will last, because I will make it last. Number 2. The full-length mirror check. Before leaving the house, every woman checked herself in a full-length mirror. Front, side, turn, back. If something was off, she fixed it before the door opened. Whether a door-mounted mirror or a standing oval in the bedroom, she turned slowly. She checked the hemline. She checked the back of the stockings for straight seams. Some women had their daughters stand behind and report what they saw. The whole inspection took 60 seconds. Those 60 seconds were non-negotiable. The mirror was not about vanity. It was about accountability. She decided what finished looked like, and she did not leave until she met it. That is not fashion. That is self-respect. Number 1. She had 5 outfits and never looked the same twice. The average woman in the early 1960s owned far fewer clothes than any woman alive today. A church dress, a house dress, 2 skirts with blouses that coordinated, a good suit for occasions. And she looked better every single day than a woman standing in front of a walk-in closet full of fast fashion she had worn once. The closet was small, sometimes 3 feet wide, wooden hangers, never wire, a navy wool skirt from Penny's, $4.98, 2 cotton blouses, $2.50 each, a shift dress from the Sears catalog, $6.95, a cardigan, $3.99, Monday, the skirt and the white blouse, Tuesday, the skirt and the printed blouse with the scarf at the neck, Wednesday, the shift dress belted, Thursday, blouse and cardigan, Friday, the dress again, a different brooch, different shoes. Today, the average American woman owns 30 outfits. She wears about 20% of them. She had 5 outfits. She looked like $1 million. Not because of what she owned, but because of what she knew. She knew how to press, how to mend, how to starch, how to dye, how to accessorize. The average American woman now owns roughly 100 pieces of clothing. Her grandmother owned 5 outfits and wore every one. 20 tricks. Not one of them needed a credit card, a shopping app, or a closet the size of a bedroom. They needed a sewing basket, an iron, a bottle of vinegar, and the belief that what you already owned was enough. These women were not behind. They were ahead. They solved every problem the fashion industry now charges $100 a month to solve. And they did it before the school bus arrived. And somewhere right now, a granddaughter is watching an old woman unfold a silk scarf at the kitchen table. She folds it once, twice. She ties it at the throat without looking in a mirror, and without a single word the lesson begins again.
But that era did not limit its secrets to one decade. The tricks carried forward and in some cases grew sharper with time. What came next proved that the women of the 1960s had been paying close attention.
Number 25. The one good coat rule. A woman bought one good wool coat, and she wore it for a decade. Not a season, a decade. A forced man or botany wool coat lined in satin cost $25 to $40 in 1953. The faint smell of lanolin rose from the fabric when it rained. She brushed it with a natural bristle brush after every wearing. She hung it on a wide wooden hanger, never a wire one. When the lining wore through, she took it to the tailor. $3 bought a new lining. The coat outlasted 3 presidents. That coat settled into the shape of one woman's shoulders over years of wearing. That fitty cannot be manufactured in a factory overseas for $9. Number 24. The cinch belt that made the silhouette. A wide belt 2 to 3 inches, cinched at the natural waist over almost every dress and skirt. It created the hourglass shape that defined the decade. Christian Dior introduced his new look in 1947. Fuller skirts, nipped waists, the cinch belt completed that silhouette. Patent leather, elastic-backed, or simple grosgrain ribbon. $1.50 at Woolworth's. The click of the buckle pulling tight. The way it divided a woman's body into 3 clean lines: shoulders, waist, skirt. One accessory. Not a gym membership, not a diet subscription. A belt. These women understood something the industry later forgot. You do not change the body, you frame it. Number 23. Kleinert's dress shields. Small crescent-shaped pads sewn or pinned into the underarm of every good dress, blouse, and suit jacket. They absorbed perspiration and prevented staining before it ever happened. 25 cents a pair. Simple layers of cotton and linen with absorbent fillings stitched between them. A woman in the 1950s did not throw away a silk blouse because of a yellow stain. She made sure the stain never arrived. A quarter. That is what it cost to protect a $15 dress. Today, the average American throws away about 80 pounds of clothing per year. That number would have been unthinkable to the woman with the dress shields pinned inside her sleeves. Number 22. The stocking seam check before leaving the house. Before walking out the front door, a woman checked that the seams on her stockings ran perfectly, straight up the back of each leg. She used a hand mirror, or she asked someone in the house to look. Fully fashioned nylon stockings with a dark back seam. They cost $1 to $1.65 a pair. That seam had to run ruler straight from ankle to calf. Daughters checked each other in the hallway. Mothers stood by the front door and turned slowly while someone knelt to look. It was a 5-second ritual that told the world one thing. I checked. I cared. Nobody does that anymore. Not because the standard was too high, because nobody passed the standard down. Number 21. Pressing with a damp cloth, not a bare iron. A woman never set a hot iron directly on good fabric. She placed a damp cotton pressing cloth between the iron and the garment. And she pressed, never dragged. A piece of clean white muslin, wrung out, laid flat over the collar or the seam. The hiss of steam rising when the iron came down. The smell of hot, damp cotton filling the kitchen. The cloth protected wool from getting a shine, silk from scorching, and cotton from going flat and lifeless. There is a difference between ironing and pressing. Ironing is maintenance. Pressing is craft. The way a carpenter sands the last edge before he lets a piece leave his shop. Something worth noticing about this list so far. Half of these tricks are invisible. Dress shields, stocking seams, a pressing cloth nobody ever sees. The elegance of the 1950s was not built on what showed. It was built on what was underneath. Number 20. The starched crinoline ritual. Women starched their crinoline petticoats at home until the fabric was stiff enough to hold a full skirt out like an open umbrella. Some women soaked the crinoline overnight in water mixed with Knox gelatin and laid it flat in a wide circle on the basement floor. By morning, it stood straight out from the waist on its own. A dozen boxes of starch per wash day. The rustle of nylon net over taffeta when she walked. The itch of crinoline against bare legs in the summer heat. That silhouette was not bought off a department store rack. It was built by hand in the basement the night before church. Number 19. RIT dye to resurrect faded clothes. When a dress faded, a woman did not replace it. She dyed it in the kitchen sink for 15 cents. RIT all-purpose dye. A small cardboard box the size of a playing card. 32 colors on the drugstore shelf. You dissolved the powder in hot water, submerged the garment, stirred it with a wooden spoon for 20 minutes, then rinsed until the water ran clear. A faded navy skirt returned to navy. Push-button color, they called it in the advertisements. Nobody called this sustainable fashion. They called it Tuesday. Today, the fast fashion industry produces roughly 100 billion garments per year, and nearly 3 out of every 5 end up in a landfill. The woman at the kitchen sink with the RIT dye box never saw that coming. Number 18. The matching glove rule. A woman did not leave the house without gloves. Not in winter, not in summer. Gloves were as expected as shoes. White cotton for summer, kid leather for winter. You removed them before eating, before drinking, before putting on lipstick. You folded them in your lap at the restaurant table. The soft weight of cotton against your fingertips all morning long. A pair of white cotton gloves cost 50 cents and lasted a full season. That is what dignity cost in 1954. Number 17. Shoe polish. Sunday night. Every Sunday evening, someone in the household sat down and polished the shoes for the week ahead. Every pair. The whole family. Kiwi shoe polish. That flat round tin with the twist-open lid that popped when you pried it up. The smell of carnauba wax and turpentine filling the kitchen. A rag wrapped tight around 2 fingers. Black, brown, oxblood, cordovan. Then the buffing back and forth until you could see light bounce off the toe cap. In 2024, Kiwi announced it was discontinuing the brand in the United States. Gone from American shelves. The polish that shined the boots of 2 world wars every first day of school, every Sunday kitchen in the country. Not because it stopped working, because nobody polishes shoes anymore. The ritual died first, and then the tin followed it out the door. Number 16. The detachable collar and cuff. Women sewed removable white collars and cuffs onto dark dresses. You changed the collar and you changed the entire look of the dress. Crisp white pique cotton or crocheted lace, basted on with a few loose stitches, removed for washing, starched stiff, and sewn right back on. A dark navy dress worn to work on Monday with a plain white collar appeared again on Wednesday with a lace-trimmed one. Same dress. Different woman walking through the door. A packet of lace collars at the notions counter cost 75 cents. She did not need 10 dresses. She needed one good one and the intelligence to transform it. That is not poverty. That is engineering. Number 15. The silk scarf tied 30 ways. A single silk or rayon scarf served as a head covering, a necktie, a belt, a handbag accent, and a hair wrap. One piece of fabric, 30 configurations. A 27-inch square of printed silk. Hermes for the wealthy, the 5 and dime counter for everyone else. Rolled on the diagonal and knotted at the throat. Folded into a triangle and tied under the chin against the wind. Ladies' Home Journal printed new scarf, tying diagrams every single spring. A woman with one good scarf and 2 steady hands had more range than a woman today, standing in front of 100 garments, saying she has nothing to wear. Number 14. The full-length mirror check before walking out. No woman left the house without turning completely around in front of a full-length mirror. front, side, back. Every single time. A narrow mirror mounted on the inside of the bedroom closet door. She checked the hemline. She checked the slip. She checked the stocking seams, the collar, the back of the skirt for wrinkles from sitting in the car. That mirror was not vanity. It was quality control. She was the last inspector on the assembly line before the finished product left the building. Number 13. The hem gauge and the exact right length. Every woman owned a hem gauge, a small metal ruler with a sliding marker. She hemmed every skirt and dress to the precise correct length, a 6-inch aluminum gauge, 15 cents at the notions counter. You pinned the hem, measured every inch around the full circumference of the skirt, and blind stitched it by hand. The stitches were completely invisible from the outside. A hem that fell a 1/4 inch too short told every woman in the room that the one wearing it had not taken the time. Precision was not optional. It was dignity made visible, one hidden stitch at a time. Number 12. Vinegar in the rinse water for darks. A cup of white vinegar added to the final rinse cycle kept dark fabrics dark. No special product, no premium detergent. Heinz white vinegar, 12 cents a bottle. The acetic acid sealed the dye into the fiber and stopped it from bleeding out. A black dress stayed black through a full season of weekly washing. No color-safe bleach. No separate gentle cycle. No $60 bottle with a French label. The pantry was the laundry supply closet. The kitchen was the laboratory. Every solution a woman needed was already somewhere in the house. Number 11. The structured handbag that sat upright. A woman's handbag was rigid, structured, and small. It sat upright on a restaurant table without tipping. She did not carry a sack. She carried a case, a top handlebag in calfskin or patent leather, a metal clasp that snapped shut with one clean click, a mirror inside the flap. That bag sat beside her at the church pew, on the department store counter, at the luncheon table. It did not slouch over. A good one cost $5 to $10 and lasted a decade. There is a reason the handbag sat upright. The woman who carried it sat upright too. The object matched the posture. That was not coincidence. That was culture. What nobody says about the 1950s is how little these women actually needed. There is a movement happening right now, women online calling it capsule wardrobes, buying fewer things, choosing better. They are discovering what grandmothers already knew 70 years ago. Less done well was more than enough. Number 10. The mending basket by the radio. Every household had a mending basket. Women mended in the evening the way we now scroll through our phones. A wicker basket with a cloth lining. A darning egg for socks, smooth wood the size of a small pear. A pincushion shaped like a red tomato with a tiny strawberry dangling off the side. A thimble worn smooth from years of pressing against a needle. She darned the heel of a stocking, patched the elbow of a child's shirt. The soft click of scissors, the pull of thread through fabric. The radio playing low in the other room. Mending was not poverty. Mending was loyalty. Loyalty to the garment, to the money it cost, and to the belief that throwing something away because it had one small flaw was itself a kind of failure. Number 9. The slip rule. No woman wore a dress or skirt without a slip underneath. Not ever. Not once. Barbizon. Vanity Fair. $2 to $4. Nylon or rayon cut on the bias, so it skimmed the body without clinging. The slip prevented show-through. It kept the skirt from sticking to the legs in the heat. A half slip for skirts, a full slip for dresses. always 1 inch shorter than the garment above it. The elegance of the 1950s was built in layers from the inside out. The thing nobody saw was the thing that made everything else work. Number 8. The brooch that changed everything. A single brooch pinned to a collar, a lapel, or the center of a neckline transformed a plain dark dress into something dressed up. One piece, one gesture, a completely different entrance, a rhinestone sunburst, a gold tone leaf, a cameo on an oval frame, $1 to $3, pinned high on the left lapel of a suit jacket. Light caught the stones. An entire outfit shifted direction because of one small addition that weighed less than a quarter. She did not buy a new dress for the church social. She pinned on the brooch. Transformation does not require a transaction. Number 7. Liquid white for canvas shoes. White canvas shoes were cleaned every week with liquid white shoe polish from a bottle with a sponge tip applicator, Griffin All White, $2.80. Or Kiwi White, 20 cents a bottle. You wipe the shoes clean with a damp rag, dab the sponge across every surface in smooth, even strokes, and set them on newspaper by the back door to dry. There was that chalk white smell on the porch. Girls did this the night before the first day of school. Nurses did it every single Saturday night. A pair of clean white shoes says one thing without a word. I am not worn down. I am maintained. The shoes cost $2. The polish cost 20 cents. The effect was worth everything. Number 6. 30 garments and nothing wasted. The average American woman in the 1950s owned roughly 30 garments total. Every piece was chosen to work with every other piece in the closet. Women flipped collars. They belted a blouse 3 different ways. They changed a scarf or a brooch and walked out looking like a different person. A typical wardrobe held 1 lightweight coat, 1 winter coat, a raincoat, 3 wool dresses, 3 cotton dresses, 1 formal dress, 1 party dress, and a handful of blouses and skirts. Today, the average American woman owns well over 100 garments. She stands in front of the closet every morning and says she has nothing to wear. Her grandmother had 30 pieces and never said that once. There is a word for what these women practiced. The word is discipline. Not the discipline of going without, the discipline of choosing with intention. Every purchase had a reason. Every garment had a role. That is not simplicity. That is sophistication of the highest order. Number 5. The girdle as foundation architecture. The girdle was not optional. It was the structural foundation under the entire silhouette. Playtex Living Girdle. $4 to $6. A tube of powdered latex you stepped into and rolled up over the hips. Garter clips hung from the bottom hem to hold stockings taut all day. There was that faint elastic smell when you first tore the cellophane off the package. The smooth, unbroken line it created from ribcage to thigh. The clothing of the era was designed to fit over it. The girdle was engineering. The silhouette required a foundation, and the girdle was it. Number 4. Matching bag and shoes. A woman's handbag and shoes matched each other. Always. Black bag with black shoes. Navy with navy. Brown with brown. No exceptions. She owned 2 or 3 pairs of good shoes and 2 or 3 handbags to go with them. After Easter, white shoes and a white bag. After Labor Day, dark shoes and a dark bag. It was a system, not a suggestion. Matching was never about following fashion. It was about coherence. A woman who matched her bag and shoes was telling every room she walked into that she was composed. And in a time when women controlled very little outside the home, being composed was power. Number 3. The good jewelry rule. A woman owned a few good pieces of jewelry, a strand of pearls, a wristwatch, a pair of earrings, a brooch. She wore them for decades. A single strand of cultured pearls given at high school graduation, worn at weddings, funerals, job interviews, and Christmas dinner for the next 40 years. A gold watch received on a 21st birthday. A pair of pearl stud earrings in a velvet-lined box on the dresser. Those pearls were not accessories. They were witnesses. They were at the wedding. They were at the christening. When the daughter finally receives them, she does not receive jewelry. She receives her mother's life. One clasp at a time. Number 2. The hat rule. A woman wore a hat every time she left the house. To church, to the grocery store, to lunch. The hat completed the outfit the way a period completes a sentence. Pillbox for spring. Wide-brimmed straw for July. Felt with a net veil for October. A long hat pin pushed through the crown to hold it steady in the wind. A hat cost $2 to $5. She tilted it slightly forward or slightly to one side, never flat and square on top of the head. The hat was the last thing she put on before opening the front door. It was the signal that the outfit was done. The hat did not make her beautiful. It made her deliberate. And there is nothing more elegant on this earth than a woman who is deliberate. But there is one trick left, and it is the one that made every single item before it possible. It did not happen at a department store. It happened at a kitchen table after the supper dishes were cleared. Number 1. Sewing her own clothes from a paper pattern. A woman bought a paper pattern, a few yards of fabric, and she sewed her own dress from scratch for less than $2. McCall's. Butterick. Simplicity. 50-cent patterns. A yard of cotton broadcloth for another 50 cents. A spool of thread for a dime. The thin tissue paper of the pattern pieces pinned to the fabric with straight pins in a careful row. The chalk line drawn along the edge. The scissors cutting along the dotted marks. The hum of a Singer's sewing machine on the kitchen table. After the children were put to bed, that sound, that low, steady hum under the kitchen light. It was the sound of a woman building something that belonged to no one but her. The machine was as common as the stove. The skills passed from mother to daughter without ceremony, just a hand guiding a hand. What walked out the front door on Sunday morning was a dress that fit her and nobody else on the street. That pattern envelope with the drawing of the elegant woman on the front was a promise. The promise that a woman with a needle and enough patience could make herself absolutely anything. And she did. Somewhere right now, a sewing machine sits in the back of a closet, dusty. The bobbin still threaded. The woman who used it is gone. But the dresses she made from those paper patterns still hang in a daughter's guest room. And if you hold one up to the light, you can still see the tiny, even stitches. Each one placed by hand. Each one invisible from the outside. Each one proof that the woman who wore this dress did not buy her elegance. She built it. And somewhere tonight a daughter is opening her grandmother's sewing box. The lid comes off. The thimble is still inside. And without a single word, the lesson begins again.
Every one of those tricks carried a quiet message. Elegance was not purchased, it was practiced. And practicing it meant knowing the rules, because in the 1950s there was a code that governed how every woman presented herself, and the penalties for breaking it were immediate and unforgiving.
Number 25. A slip under every dress. Every dress required a slip underneath. Going without one was not a style choice, it was a scandal. A barbizon slip in white nylon with lace at the hem. It cost $2.98 at Sears in 1954. The cool glide of the fabric settling over the hips. She owned at least 3. White for light dresses, black for navy or dark wool. The slip prevented show-through in sunlight. It smoothed the silhouette and kept the outer dress from clinging to stockings. If the wind caught a cotton skirt on Main Street, and she was not wearing one, the talk started before she reached the post office. The slip was the private architecture of a public woman. Nobody saw it. Everybody knew if it was missing. But the slip was only the foundation. What she carried on the outside was measured just as closely. Number 24. Matching shoes and handbag. A woman's shoes and handbag had to match in color. Not close. Exact. Black patent pumps meant a black patent purse. Brown calfskin shoes meant a brown calfskin bag. A woman at J.C. Penney in 1956 did not buy one without considering the other. Stores displayed coordinated sets side by side like dance partners. Magazine ads showed them together. Carrying a black purse with navy shoes could draw a look from across the room that needed no words. It was not about fashion. It was about being finished. A woman who matched told the world she paid attention that morning, that nothing had fallen apart yet. Number 23. A clean handkerchief at all times. A lady carried a clean handkerchief in her purse. It was as essential as her house key. A white cotton square with a crocheted edge or a monogrammed initial. 5 cents at the 5 and dime. Pressed with a warm iron, folded tight, tucked beside the compact and the coin purse. She used it to blot her lipstick, to dab the corner of her eye at a funeral, to wipe a child's face on the church steps, to hand to a stranger who needed one more than she did. The handkerchief was not about hygiene, it was about readiness. She carried it because the world was unpredictable and she intended to meet it composed. Number 22. The correct hemline. There was a correct hemline length, and every woman was expected to know it. Mid-calf for day dresses, just below the knee for church, ankle length for evening. Dior's new look had reset the silhouette in 1947, and by the 50s the rules were fixed. A woman hemmed every dress herself or paid a seamstress 25 cents to do it. The mark was chalked while she stood on a kitchen stool. Someone circled her with a yardstick. 1 inch too short and she looked fast. 1 inch too long and she looked dowdy. The margin was about 2 inches wide. The hemline was measured in inches, but judged in character. And every woman in the room could read it at a glance. But if the hemline showed who she was, what she wore at the collar showed how much she could do with what she had. Number 21. Collar and cuff sets. Women used detachable collars and cuffs to make the same dress look different. White cotton peak collars, Peter Pan collars in lace, organdy cuffs with eyelet edges. 50 cents a set at the notions counter at Woolworth's. Pinned or snapped to the neckline and wrist of a plain dark dress. Swapped out every week. The dress stayed the same. The collar changed the woman. Monday's white cotton, Wednesday's lace, Sunday's best organdy. 1 dress, 3 lives. She could not afford 6 dresses. She could afford 6 collars. And no one ever had to know the difference. That was not poverty. That was ingenuity wearing a clean white collar. 5 rules in, and notice what they share. None of them required money. A slip cost $3 and lasted 3 years. A handkerchief cost a nickel. A collar set cost less than a loaf of bread. These rules were not about spending. They were about noticing. Small daily acts of maintenance that said one thing: I have not given up. The woman who followed them did not look expensive. She looked cared for. There is a difference, and everyone could see it. Number 20. The seasonal wardrobe changeover. Twice a year, a woman packed away one entire wardrobe and brought out another. Summer clothes in October. Winter clothes in April. No exceptions. Cedar sachets or mothball packets from Rexall for 10 cents a box. Tissue paper between every fold. Wool skirts wrapped in old pillowcases. Summer cottons pressed before storage. The whole operation took a Saturday afternoon. The smell of cedar and camphor in a closed bedroom. Straw hats stored in round hat boxes on the top shelf. White shoes cleaned with kiwi polish and wrapped in flannel. Today, the average American throws away roughly 80 pounds of clothing a year. She did not throw anything away. She put it to sleep. And in the spring she brought it back, pressed and ready, as though it had never been gone. Number 19. The apron rule. A woman wore an apron during housework. The moment the doorbell rang, the apron came off, non-negotiable. A cotton feed sack apron, hand-sewn with bias trim, went on at 6 in the morning over the house dress. It caught flour from biscuits, grease from the stove, and bleach from the laundry. The strings were tied in a bow at the back. When the doorbell rang, she pulled it off in one motion, folded it on the counter, smoothed her dress, touched her hair, and opened the door looking like she had not just scrubbed a floor on her hands and knees. The apron was the wall between labor and presentation. She was not ashamed of the work. She just never let anyone see her in it. And behind that apron was another rule most people have forgotten entirely. Number 18. The house dress. A woman wore a house dress for morning chores. She changed into a proper dress before stepping outside or receiving company. It might be a snap front cotton house dress from the Montgomery Ward catalog, $1.69, worn with flat slippers and no stockings. It was the uniform of breakfast, dishes, mopping, and laundry. It did not leave the house. If a neighbor appeared at the back door, the house dress was acceptable. If company arrived at the front door, it was not. The change took 4 minutes. House dress off, girdle on, stockings, dress, shoes, lipstick. She was a different woman by the time she reached the living room. 2 women lived inside the same morning. One scrubbed, the other answered the door. Number 17. No patent leather before Easter. Patent leather shoes had a calendar. You wore them between Easter Sunday and Labor Day. Outside those months, they stayed in the closet. Black patent Mary Janes for girls, patent pumps for women. The high gloss caught every light in the room. A girl's mother polished them with Vaseline the night before Easter and set them by the bed. The first wearing of patent leather meant spring had arrived. After Labor Day, they went into a flannel bag. Wearing patent in October was like wearing a bathing suit to church. The rule had no logic. It had gravity, followed because a mother said so and her mother before that. That was enough, but knowing when to wear patent leather was one thing. Making the dress that went above it was another skill entirely. Number 16. Sewing was expected. A woman was expected to sew, not as a hobby, as a basic life skill, no different from cooking, a Singer treadle machine, or a portable featherweight at $64 in 1953. McCall's and Simplicity patterns at 35 cents each. She made her daughter's school dresses. She altered her own skirts. She let out her husband's waistband after Thanksgiving. The sound of the bobbin winding, the smell of fresh-cut cotton on the kitchen table, pattern pieces pinned to the fabric with straight pins from a red tomato pincushion. Today, there is an entire movement of young women online learning capsule wardrobes, buying less and making more. They think they invented something. She was doing it 70 years ago with a 35-cent pattern and a kitchen table. She did not call herself a seamstress. She called herself dressed. The machine was just how she got there. 10 rules deep and a pattern is forming. These women did not buy their way out of problems. They ironed them, mended them, altered them, and stored them in tissue paper. The skills were not taught in a classroom. They were handed across kitchen tables, one pinned sleeve at a time. That knowledge did not vanish because it was outdated. It vanished because it was unprofitable. You cannot sell a subscription to a woman who already knows how to fix what she has. Number 15. Hair had to be done. A woman's hair had to look set and styled, not natural, not air-dried. Done. Uncombed hair in public was treated like an open confession that something had gone wrong at home. Pin curls set at night. Brush rollers wrapped at the vanity. Aquanet in the tall blue can at 89 cents. A weekly salon visit, $1.50, for a wash and set. The click of wave clamps. The pull of a boar bristle brush through a fresh set. She did not walk to the mailbox with her hair down. She did not answer the door without running a comb through it. Her hair was not vanity. It was proof. It told the neighborhood she had time and discipline and pride. Even on the mornings she had none of those things, especially on those mornings. Number 14. Mending had to be invisible. A torn seam, a missing button, or a frayed hem had to be repaired before the garment was worn again. Visible wear was a visible failure. There was a darning egg in the sewing basket, a card of matched thread, a packet of needles from Woolworth's for 5 cents. She darned socks over a wooden egg with stitches so tight you could not find the repair. A fallen hem could be fixed in 10 minutes. A missing button was replaced from the button jar, a mason jar full of buttons cut from every garment that had ever worn out. There was the faint snap of a new button being tested. She did not show the stitches. That was the whole point. A woman who wore a mended dress without complaint was admired. A woman who wore an unmended one was not. And if the mending had to be invisible, the pressing had to be perfect. Number 13. Iron everything. Cotton wrinkled. Everything was cotton, so everything was ironed. Shirts, dresses, pillowcases, tablecloths, handkerchiefs, even bed sheets. A General Electric steam iron cost $7.95 in 1955. A wooden ironing board folded flat behind the kitchen door. A sprinkle bottle made from a green Coca-Cola bottle with a cork sprinkler top. The damp garments were rolled tight and stored in the icebox until she was ready. The smell of hot starch on cotton, the hiss of steam on a Tuesday morning, 3 hours for a family of 4. Every collar pressed flat, every pleat set crisp. A wrinkled shirt walking out the front door was not a wrinkled shirt. It was a judgment on the woman who let him leave the house in it. Number 12. Sunday best. A woman kept her best dress for church. It was not worn on any other day. It had its own hanger, its own care, and its own purpose. A navy rayon crepe with a lace collar. A fitted jacket with covered buttons. Matching hat, gloves, and purse. The dress was kept at the front of the closet under a dry cleaner's bag. Shoes polished Saturday night. The dress laid out on the bed before sleep. In the morning, the family dressed in silence. The car smelled of starch and shoe polish on the drive. The pew was where the dress lived, and the dress was where the woman was seen. Sunday best was not about God. It was about witness. Every woman in that sanctuary was both dressed and dressing for judgment. And it was not just Sunday. Every trip beyond the front door carried the same expectation. Number 11. Dressed for any errand. A woman did not leave the house in anything less than a proper dress, stockings, and shoes. Not for the grocery store, not for the post office, not for the 5 and dime. A shirtwaist dress and low heels to buy milk at the A&P. Lipstick applied in the car before she opened the door. A hat, even in July. The Piggly Wiggly, the hardware store, the bank. Every public space was a stage, and she did not step onto it unprepared. Today, 3 out of 4 American women say they regularly leave the house in athletic wear. In 1953, that would have been unthinkable. She was not running errands. She was being seen. And the line between private and public was drawn at the front door. 15 rules. And every one of them enforced by the same jury, other women. There was no fashion police. There were no tickets. But there was something worse. The quiet remark at the bridge table. The raised eyebrow at the PTA meeting. The look that lasted half a second and carried a full sentence. She wore that same dress last Thursday. Her hem is coming down. Her seams are crooked. This was not cruelty. This was a system. Every woman was both the prisoner and the guard. She followed the rules because she enforced them. She enforced them because she followed them. That circle kept the whole structure standing for 50 years. Number 10. Jewelry had hours. Certain pieces were for daytime, others for evening only. Mixing the two was a visible error. A single strand of Richelieu simulated pearls at $2.98 from the Sears catalog was worn with a cardigan and a day dress. Clip-on rhinestone earrings from the costume jewelry counter were saved for Saturday night. Gold for the afternoon. Silver for the evening. Brooches for wool coats and church. A cocktail ring was never worn before 5 o'clock. The rules were specific, universal, and entirely unwritten. Her jewelry did not say what she could afford. It said what time it was and whether she knew the difference. That knowledge was her inheritance. She got it the same place she got the pearls. From her mother. Number 9. Powder and lipstick before leaving the house. A bare face was not a face. A woman applied powder and lipstick before stepping outside every single time, even to check the mailbox. Max Factor pancake makeup. Coty Air spun powder in the pink box for 65 cents. Revlon lipstick. Cherries in the snow, $1.10. A compact mirror in the purse. The click of the clasp, the twist of the tube, the blot on a tissue. Every department store counter had a saleswoman behind glass who could match her skin in 60 seconds. The average American woman today spends over $300 a year on face products alone. Her grandmother spent $4 a year and wore the same red every day of her life. The lipstick was not decoration. It was armor. She put it on to be ready. Number 8. A hat for leaving the house. A woman wore a hat whenever she left home for anything more formal than the backyard. A pillbox hat, $2.50 from the millinery counter. A wide straw cartwheel for summer. A felt cloche for autumn. Hat pins from the vanity drawer. The hat matched the coat or the dress or the gloves. She owned 3 hats at minimum. One for the doctor. One for the department store. Her best one for church. The ritual of pinning it just so, the angle tilted slightly right. The hat said she had somewhere to be and someone to be when she got there. Taking it off at home was the quiet exhale at the end of being seen. The hat rack by the front door was the border between public and private. Number 7. Head covered in church. In many denominations, a woman's head was covered during services. Catholic, Lutheran, and some Baptist. A hat, a scarf, or a chapel veil. A black lace mantilla folded in a small square in her purse. A veiled hat with a half-inch net that fell just below the eyes. Catholic women covered their hair as a matter of canon law until 1983. A girl arriving at Mass without a head covering would bobby pin a tissue to the top of her head before stepping through the nave. The rustle of lace being unfolded, the scent of incense mixing with perfume, the slight itch of a veil on the forehead during a long homily. She covered her head because her grandmother had. The reasons were explained, then forgotten, then explained again. The veil remained, and what she wore on her face was held to that same level of precision. Number 6. Matching lipstick and nail polish. A woman's lipstick and nail polish had to be the same shade, not similar, the same. Revlon had built an empire on this idea since the late 1930s. Fire and ice. Cherries in the snow. Pink lightning. Each came in a lipstick tube and a matching nail lacquer. She bought them together. She applied the nails on Saturday night. She wore the lipstick every day. Mismatched reds on the lips and nails were a visible lapse. The lipstick tube in her purse, the polish bottle on the vanity. Same shade, different rooms. Same woman. Revlon did not invent vanity. They organized it. They gave it a shade number, and she memorized that number the way she memorized her husband's collar size, because both were her responsibility. 20 rules behind us, and a truth is plain. These women were not overdressed. They were armed. Every hat, every glove, every matched lip and fingertip was part of a system designed by women, enforced by women, and understood only by women. Men did not notice the collar sets. Men did not check the stocking seams. Women did. This was their language, fluent, precise, and never spoken out loud. When the rules fell apart in the 1960s, what was lost was not just the wardrobe. It was the grammar. The whole structure that let a woman say, without ever opening her mouth, "I am here, and I am not to be underestimated." Number 5. Gloves in public. A woman wore gloves when she left the house. White cotton shorties for summer at 39 cents a pair. Kid leather for winter at $3 a pair. She wore them to church, to lunch, to shop downtown. A lady never removed her gloves to shake hands. She took them off for eating, for drinking, and for putting on her makeup. Nothing else. The glove drawer in the front hall held 6 pairs at a minimum. The faint scent of leather and talcum powder when the drawer slid open. She put them on before stepping through the front door and did not take them off until she was seated at a table. The quiet stretch of cotton across the knuckles. The gloves did not keep her hands warm. They kept her dressed. Bare hands in town were unfinished hands, and an unfinished woman was a woman who had forgotten what was expected of her. Number 4. No white after Labor Day. White clothing, white shoes, white handbags. All packed away after Labor Day, not seen again until Memorial Day. This was the most widely known fashion rule of the 20th century, and it had no practical reason behind it. White spectator pumps wrapped in flannel the first week of September. White linen dresses cleaned and sealed in garment bags. By the 50s, this custom had hardened into gospel. It gave old money a way to spot the newcomers. And the newcomers learned fast, because not knowing the rule was worse than breaking it. The rule made no sense. That was the point. Rules that make no sense are the hardest to break, because breaking them proves you never learned them in the first place. And not having learned them said everything. And if white had a season, bearskin had none at all. Number 3. No bare legs. A woman wore stockings every time she left the house. Bare legs were considered undignified, common, and in many circles, scandalous. Nylon stockings cost $1.29 a pair, attached to the girdle with 4 metal garter clips. The fragility was legendary. Women wore cotton gloves while pulling on sheer nylons to keep a fingernail from catching the fabric. One snag, and the whole stocking was ruined. A single run meant she carried a spare pair in her purse. Clear nail polish was dabbed at the top of a ladder to stop it from spreading. There was the quiet humiliation of a run appearing during a church social. She wore stockings in July. She wore them to the grocery store. She wore them knowing they would not last the week. Most women bought about 12 pairs a year. That is what the rules cost. Not just money. Time, patience, stillness in the morning while she rolled them on one leg at a time. Number 2. The seam had to be straight. Seamed stockings had a dark line running up the back of each leg. That seam had to be perfectly straight. A crooked seam was the most visible evidence that a woman had dressed in a hurry, or worse, that she did not care. She checked them in a hand mirror before leaving the bedroom. She asked her daughter to look. The seam had to run like a plumb line from the heel to the back of the knee. A quarter-inch off-center, and another woman would spot it from across the room. It could not be bought straight. It could not be wished straight. It had to be checked, adjusted, and maintained all day long. That line was the difference between dressed and almost was never good enough. And beneath every stocking, every seam, every dress that hung just right, there was one rule that held everything together. The first thing she put on each morning. The last thing anyone would ever mention out loud. Number 1. The girdle. Every woman wore a girdle. Not just heavy women. Every woman, thin women, young women. A girl of 16 was fitted for one. A Playtex living girdle came rolled in a tall metal tube, like a can of tennis balls. $3.95 at the department store counter. The rubber smell when the tube was opened. The pull of latex against skin. 4 metal garter clips hanging from the bottom hem to hold the stockings in place. The particular sound of those clips snapping shut. She wore it from breakfast to bedtime. In summer, the latex trapped heat against the body like a second layer of weather. Today, the shapewear industry is worth over $5 billion a year. Spanx and its imitators have reinvented the girdle under a modern name and a marketing campaign about empowerment. The women of 1953 did not need a campaign. They called it getting dressed. Nobody saw the girdle. She felt it all day long. And when she unhooked it at night and hung it over the bathroom door, that was the sound of a woman finally being allowed to breathe. 40 million women, every morning, for a decade. Not one of them ever called it comfortable. They called it necessary. And that was the last word on the matter. 25 rules. Not one of them in any textbook. Not one survived the century that made them. They were carried in muscle memory, mirror checks, and the quiet corrections of mothers who knew what the world expected. And somewhere tonight, a woman in her 80s is folding a white handkerchief into a square and putting it in her purse before she goes to bed. Nobody asks her to. Nobody will check. She does it because she always has, and she is not going to stop now.
Those rules shaped how a woman moved through public life. But the strictest standards were not enforced by neighbors or department store clerks. They were enforced at home, behind a closed front door where a different kind of expectation waited every evening.
Number 25. The 5 o'clock transformation. 30 minutes before her husband was due home, a woman stopped everything. She went to the bathroom and rebuilt herself from the ground up. Fresh clothes, fresh lipstick, fresh hair. By the time the front door opened, no trace of the day remained. The housecoat came off. A clean blouse or day dress went on. Face washed, Pond's cold cream applied, then powder from a compact. Lipstick reapplied. Hair repinned or brushed out. Earrings clipped on. Good Housekeeping and Ladies' Home Journal both ran articles advising this explicitly. A wife should greet him looking as if she had been looking forward to this moment all day. The children were told to be quiet. The kitchen was wiped down, a pot of coffee set to brew, the sound of tires on gravel, the final check in the hall mirror, the door opening. She did not do this because she was subservient. She did it because she understood what most people have forgotten. Effort is a language. A man who comes home to a woman who prepared for his arrival feels something no amount of talking ever produces. She said it without a word. That transformation started at the face. Number 24. The girdle worn every day without exception. A woman put on a girdle every morning the way she put on shoes. It was not optional. It was the foundation garment everything else was built on. Playtex Living Girdle, $3.95 at Sears. Rubber and cotton panels held the stomach flat and the hips smooth. She powdered her skin first so the rubber would slide. The metal garter clips hung down to hold the stockings. You did not sit in a chair and let your stomach go. You did not slouch. The girdle would not allow it. She bought hers in 1953 and wore it every day for a decade. That is not oppression. That is discipline. So practiced it stopped being noticed. The girdle held the silhouette. But the first thing he actually saw, before the figure, before the dress, was her mouth. Number 23. Lipstick, before he opened his eyes. A woman applied lipstick before her husband ever saw her face in the morning. She was up before him. By the time he walked into the kitchen, her lips were done. Revlon Fire and Ice was launched in 1952. It cost $1.10 at the drugstore counter. Tangy Natural was 49 cents for a subtler look. She applied it at the vanity in pale light before dawn and blotted once on tissue. The rule was not simply to wear lipstick. The rule was that he should never see you without it. It was not about the lipstick. It was about the decision made in the dark before anyone asked her for anything, the decision to present herself as though she still cared what he thought. That decision, repeated every morning for 30 years, held more marriages together than any conversation. The lipstick was hers, but there was one recipe that was never hers. She learned it anyway, down to the last quarter teaspoon of salt. Number 22. She learned his mother's recipes by heart. A new wife studied her mother-in-law's cooking and replicated it exactly, not approximately. The pot roast, the gravy, the Sunday rolls. She stood in that woman's kitchen with a pencil and a recipe card. She wrote down a handful of recipes and kept at it until they looked right. She captured the smell of onion and bay leaf that meant Sunday in his childhood. She understood that taste is memory. A man who sits down to a plate that tastes like his childhood looks at the woman who made it differently. She was not copying, she was speaking his first language. Most women learned it fluently within the first year, using nothing but a 3x5 index card and the patience to get it right. The kitchen was private, but once a week she stepped into the one place that was just for her. It cost $1.50. Number 21. The weekly beauty parlor appointment. Once a week, usually Thursday or Friday, a woman went to the beauty parlor for a wash, set, and style. It was not vanity. It was scheduled maintenance. The wash and set at the neighborhood shop cost $1.50 in 1955. A full cut and style was closer to $2.50. the hooded dryer's warm roar, the smell of Prel and permanent solution, the row of women under the dryers reading McCall's, not speaking over the noise. She did not go because she needed to be fixed. She went because she understood something simple. A woman who takes 1 hour a week to tend to herself comes home ready for the other 167 hours. The beauty parlor was not an indulgence. It was infrastructure. 5 rules in, and notice the shape of this. A woman who rebuilt herself at 5 o'clock, who armored herself in a girdle and lipstick before dawn, who learned another woman's recipes. This was not performance. This was engineering. She was building an atmosphere the way a set designer builds a stage. Every detail deliberate. Every choice made before anyone asked her to make it. She was not reacting to her marriage. She was constructing it. By hand. Every day. And the construction did not stop when something hurt. Number 20. She never mentioned her aches or ailments. A woman did not discuss her physical discomfort with her husband. Headaches, cramps, back pain, exhaustion. She managed them in silence and kept moving. Midol for cramps, 35 cents a tin. Bayer aspirin at 15 cents. A hot water bottle pressed against the lower back while she stood at the stove. How are you feeling? Fine. That was the entire conversation. A woman with a fever still set the table. A woman with a migraine still drove the children to school. She did not believe she was a martyr. She believed complaining was a tax levied on the people around you, and she refused to collect it. That restraint was not weakness. It was a form of protection so quiet that most people alive today cannot recognize it. She carried herself through pain without a word, and she carried herself through the grocery store the same way. In full dress. Number 19. Full stockings and heels to the A and P. A woman did not leave the house, not even for a quart of milk, without stockings, heels, and a presentable outfit. Nylon stockings from the Woolworths counter, 79 cents a pair, seamed, clipped to a garter belt underneath the skirt. Low pumps or kitten heels. A handbag over the forearm. Gloves in cooler months. The click of heels on the linoleum of the grocery aisle. Today, the average American woman walks into a Target in leggings and slides. She did not dress for the A and P. She dressed because she understood that a woman is seen by strangers every day. That impression follows her husband home. His wife's appearance in public was his reputation walking. She never forgot that. The public version was armor, but every night in the bathroom the armor came off. And another ritual began. Number 18, the cold cream ritual every single night. Every night before bed, a woman covered her face in cold cream. She removed the day's makeup and applied a second thin layer she slept in. It was her only skin care. It was enough. Pond's cold cream in the white jar, 49 cents. A jar lasted 2 months. She scooped it with her fingers and spread it in slow circles over the forehead, cheeks, chin, and throat. She wiped most of it off with a soft cloth and left the second layer on. Today, the average American woman owns 12 skincare products and spends over $300 a year on her face. Her grandmother owned 1 jar and had better skin at 60. This was the only moment of the day she was not ready. The cold cream face was the private face. She gave the rest of the hours to him and to the children. These 3 minutes she gave to herself. In the morning, the cream was washed off and the armor went back on, starting with an iron and a collar that had to be perfect. Number 17. She pressed his shirts herself. A wife pressed her husband's shirts by hand, daily or in a batch at the start of the week. The collar had to be crisp. The crease had to be clean. A GE steam iron $8.95 from the Sears catalog. Spray starch from a Coca-Cola bottle fitted with a sprinkler cap. The hiss of the iron meeting starched cotton. Collar first, then yoke, then sleeves with the seam lined up. Then the front panels, then the back. 5 shirts for the week, lined up in the closet by Monday night. A man walked into work in a shirt pressed by his wife's hand. He did not think about that. The man next to him, whose shirt was wrinkled, did. Everyone noticed that. She was not ironing cotton. She was ironing his dignity into the fabric before he wore it out the door. She pressed his shirts to fit. And she pressed herself to fit, too. On a bathroom scale, once a week, with a number in mind. Number 16. Keeping her figure within 5 pounds of the wedding. A woman monitored her weight and kept it within a narrow range of what she weighed on her wedding day. 5 pounds was the understood margin. The Detecto scale in the bathroom was checked once a week. Jack LaLanne. Nen was on the television starting in 1951. Women followed along in their living rooms with the furniture pushed back. Smaller portions at dinner, a grapefruit for breakfast. Today, the average American woman is 33 pounds heavier than the average woman in 1960. The weight loss industry sells $42 billion in products every year, and the number on the scale keeps climbing. She did not call it a diet. She called it keeping herself together. It was not separate from the rest of her work. It was part of it. None of this was vanity. That is the part the modern world misinterprets most. These women were not performing for approval. They were operating inside a system where a man's paycheck was the only income, where divorce meant poverty and social exile, where a woman's security was built into the structure of her marriage, not guaranteed by law. Every girdle and lipstick and pressed collar was a strategic act. This was not submission. This was competence. The kind that does not announce itself and does not stop when it gets tired. The modern word for it is emotional labor. They did not have a word for it. They just did it. And the labor went deeper than what showed on the surface. It went into the way she listened. Number 15. She asked about his day and made it matter. A wife knew the names of her husband's co-workers and his boss. She knew the office politics. She asked about his day, listened to the answer, and remembered what he said last Tuesday. The two of them sat at the kitchen table after the children were in bed. Coffee in ceramic mugs. She knew that Bill in accounting had been passed over. She knew the foreman on the second shift was causing trouble. She made him feel like the most interesting man in the room, because in that kitchen, at that table, he was. Attraction is not always physical. Sometimes it is the simple, staggering act of being known. She gave him that every night. She filled his cup and she filled his evening. But long before he sat down, the table was already set. And it was set like a stage. Number 14. The dinner table set every single night. The dinner table was set with care every evening, not just for holidays, not just for company. Every single night. Cloth napkins, folded and placed to the left. Water glasses filled. Salt and pepper centered. The table set by 5:15. The casserole or the roast already resting on a trivet. The family sat together, and the table looked like someone cared enough to prepare it. Today, more than half of American meals are eaten alone. A third are eaten in front of a screen. She did not set the table for the food. She set it for the moment when he sat down and saw what she had built. A table that said, "This home functions, this family has order, and the woman who runs it does not cut corners, not even at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday." The table was dressed, and so was she. Since before the sun came up, in something no one would ever see. Number 13. Perfume applied every morning before the housecoat went on. A woman dabbed perfume behind her ears, at both wrists, and at the hollow of her throat every single morning. Not for an occasion, for a Tuesday. Evening in Paris by Bourgeois came in a dark blue bottle, $1 at Woolworth's. Taboo by Dana was something heavier. Chanel. Number 5 belonged to the wife whose husband had a better paycheck. She left a faint trail of scent as she moved through the house. He might not have noticed it, but he would have noticed its absence. Perfume is the only product that serves no visible purpose. It exists only to create a feeling in the person standing close enough. She wore it for the radius of one arm's length. That was the radius that mattered. Number 12. She mended before he noticed. A woman inspected her husband's clothes and repaired them before the damage was visible. A loose button, a fraying cuff, a small tear at the pocket seam. He never reached into a closet and found something broken. A sewing basket kept by the chair in the living room. A pincushion shaped like a tomato. The quiet work of restitching a button at 9 o'clock while the television played. The needle through the cotton. The thread pulled tight. She mended them until they could not be mended anymore. He never knew what she had done. That was the point. The repair was meant to be invisible, so the garment could go on functioning as though nothing had happened. That is what she did for everything in that house. She fixed it before it broke. And she never sent an invoice. His clothes were ready. His dinner was ready. And when that front door swung open, something else was ready too. Something under 4 feet tall and scrubbed clean. Number 11. The children were spotless when he walked in. By 5 o'clock, the children's faces were washed. Their play clothes were changed. Their toys were picked up. When he walked through the door, it looked like a household that ran on rails. Faces wiped with a warm washcloth, hair combed, a clean shirt pulled over the head. Your father's coming home. 4 words that rearranged an entire house in 15 minutes. He opened the door to children who looked like they had been calm all day, and a house that looked like no one had played in it. She did not do this to deceive him. She did it because a man who comes home to order feels safe. And a man who feels safe in his own house looks at the woman who built that safety differently. He looks at her like a woman he never wants to leave. She built it every afternoon at 5:15. Every one of these rules has a word missing from it. The word is quietly. She quietly pressed his shirts. She quietly mended his socks. She quietly rebuilt herself before he came home. The quiet was the point. The effort was designed to be invisible. The result was supposed to look effortless. And it worked so well that most husbands never understood what was being done for them. Not until it stopped. And by then they could not name what they had lost. But not every rule was invisible. Some of them were performed in public, once a week, on purpose. Number 10. The Saturday night date. Saturday night was for each other. She dressed like it was a first date. He wore a sport coat. They went somewhere, even if somewhere was Howard Johnson's. Dinner for 2 at Howard Johnson's cost $4.50 in 1956. A booth by the window. She wore the dress she saved for Saturday, the pearl clip earrings, the good shoes. He opened her car door. Sometimes the movies afterward. The specific feeling of sitting next to a man who had cleaned up for you, and knowing you had done the same for him. They did not call it date night. They did it because a marriage without a night that belongs to it alone will eventually forget why it started. She never forgot. And she made sure he did not either. Saturday night was one kind of discipline, but there was another that ran through every other night of the week, one that lived in the throat. Number 9. She never raised her voice. A woman controlled her tone. Frustration, anger, exhaustion, none of it entered the volume of her voice in front of her husband. The anger went somewhere, into the dishwater, into the garden soil, into the telephone receiver in a low conversation with her sister on a Tuesday morning. The tight jaw at the dinner table when something had gone wrong, and she was holding the line. The controlled breath, the measured words. Her mother taught her this, not by lecture, by example. She was not silent because she was weak. She was measured because she understood something. A voice raised in a home changes the temperature of every room, and the temperature of her home was her responsibility. She kept it steady the way she kept the thermostat steady, with her hand on the dial, every single day. She governed the house by day. But at night, before she slid into bed beside him, there was one more decision. Number 8. She wore a pretty nightgown, not yesterday's housecoat. A woman changed into a presentable nightgown before bed. She did not sleep in the same clothes she had cleaned in. The bedroom was a different room. She dressed for it. Vanity Fair nylon gown, $2.98 in the Sears Roebuck catalog. A lace trim at the neckline. The housecoat came off. The nightgown went on. A different woman entered the bedroom than the one who had scrubbed the bathtub at 4 o'clock. She did not change for seduction. She changed for separation. Between the woman who worked and the woman who rested. Between the mother and the wife. The nightgown was a threshold. She crossed it every night because the bedroom was the last room of the day, and she refused to bring the kitchen into it. The nightgown said something, but so did the way she moved through a room, all day, in any room, without saying a word. Number 7. She stood and sat like she meant it. Posture, shoulders squared, back straight, chin level. Girdle or no girdle, she carried herself like a woman who had somewhere to be. Good housekeeping ran posture columns. Mothers corrected daughters at the dinner table. Sit up. 2 words that echoed through every kitchen in America. The way she stood at the church pew. The way she walked through the supermarket. No slouching in a booth. The spine straight, even at 9 o'clock when every muscle wanted to fold. Posture was not about beauty. It was about composure. A woman who holds herself upright when she is exhausted is sending a message. She has not been defeated by the day. That signal travels further than any word ever spoken. She said it with her body, but sometimes the most powerful thing she said was nothing at all. Number 6. She knew when not to talk. A woman read the room. If he came through the door with that expression, the set jaw, the loosened tie, the silence before the hello. She did not ask what was wrong. She poured his coffee and let the quiet do the work. The sound of the cup set on the table, no question attached, dinner served on time, the children kept at a low volume. She waited. Sometimes the words came at 9 o'clock. Sometimes they never came. Either way, the storm passed. And the house was still standing. Silence, in a marriage, is not absence. It is a room held open. She kept that room open on the worst nights of his life, asking nothing, expecting nothing, offering only the proof that she was still there. That is a kind of intimacy no conversation has ever matched. This is where the list stops being about beauty. These women understood a truth that an entire generation has forgotten. Attraction is not a feeling. It is a practice. It is built every day with your hands and your attention, and it cannot be purchased. It can only be performed, quietly, daily without applause. by a woman who decided her marriage was worth the effort. The last 5 rules are the ones that mattered most, and the first of them happened in front of other people. Number 5. She never corrected him in front of company. Whatever needed to be said was said later, in the bedroom with the door closed. In public, at a dinner party, in front of his family, she was his ally. No exceptions. The wrong date in a story. The exaggerated fish. She heard it and she let it stand. A light hand on his arm if the topic was getting dangerous, a gentle redirect, never a correction. The real conversation happened later, always in private. She understood something elemental. A man who is corrected by his wife in public feels small. A man who feels small pulls away. She never made him small. What she gave him in those rooms was not dishonesty. It was loyalty, and he never had to ask for it. She backed him up in public, but there was one place where they moved as equals, and it required trust she did not give easily. Number 4. She knew how to dance with him. She could follow. The foxtrot, the waltz, the slow dance at the Elks Lodge on a Saturday night. She knew how to let him lead, not because she could not lead herself, because the dance required 2 people who trusted each other to play their parts. His hand at the small of her back, her hand on his shoulder. The steps learned in the living room, furniture pushed aside, a record spinning on the console. Then the moment when she stopped counting and he stopped thinking, and their feet simply knew. The nearness of it, the smell of his aqua velva, the warmth of his hand through the fabric of her dress. Dancing is the only public act where a man and a woman hold each other and move as one body without anyone asking why. She kept that skill sharp. The dance floor was the one place where the marriage could be seen from the outside. She wanted it to look exactly the way it felt when no one was watching. The dance floor was public, but the most intimate thing she ever did for him fit inside a sandwich wrapper and weighed less than a breath. Number 3. The note in his lunch pail. She wrote a short note, 3 words, sometimes 4, sometimes just his name. She folded it into his lunch before he left for work. He found it at noon, alone at a break table, surrounded by men who did not have one, a scrap of paper torn from the pad by the telephone. Thinking of you, or see you tonight, folded once and tucked between the wax paper and the thermos. He found it under fluorescent lights at a factory table or a loading dock bench. She wrote those notes because she understood something. A man who spends 10 hours in a place that does not care about him needs one small proof that someone does. She gave him that in 12 seconds and 4 words of ink, and he kept every one of them in the drawer of his nightstand for the rest of his life. The note was a whisper. But the next rule was a silence, deliberate, maintained for decades, and more powerful than any word she ever wrote. Number 2. She never undressed carelessly in front of him. A woman maintained physical mystery in her marriage. She did not strip down in the middle of the bedroom while discussing the gas bill. The door closed. She changed in private. What he saw was chosen, not accidental. The bathroom door clicked shut. A slip was removed behind a closet door held half open. Not shame. Never shame. Intention. The deliberate preservation of the idea that seeing her was an event, not an accident. Something earned by closeness, not surrendered by convenience. She understood what every lingerie company now spends millions trying to sell. What is seen every day without thought stops being seen at all. She controlled what was visible, not out of modesty, out of strategy. The mystery was not about what she was hiding. It was about what she was protecting. The power of being looked at on purpose. That power lasted 50 years because she never gave it away for free. 24 rules, everyone deliberate, everyone requiring effort. But the last one, the one she followed before all others, happened before the sun came up. And he never saw it once. Number 1. She was already up when he woke. She rose before her husband every morning. By the time he opened his eyes, the coffee was made. Her hair was done. Her lipstick was on. The kitchen was running. He never saw the machinery. He only saw the woman. Feet on the cold floor at 5:15 in the morning. The bathroom light turned on with the door shut so it would not leak into the hallway. The percolator had been set up the night before. A Sunbeam Coffee Master, $19.95. The smell of Maxwell House filled the kitchen before the sun came through the curtains. Her face was washed, lipstick on, hair pinned. She moved through the kitchen in the gray light before dawn like a woman who had been awake for hours because she had. He came down the hall. The house was already warm, already smelling of coffee, already running. She was already standing, already dressed, already ready. She did this every morning for 40 years. He never asked her to. He never knew what time she got up. He never saw the cold floor or the dark hallway or the 3 minutes at the mirror before anyone else was awake. He saw the coffee and the kitchen and the woman who looked like she had been waiting for him. And in a way, she had. Every morning, before the light came up, she made the decision to begin the day by building something for someone else. That was not a rule she read in a magazine. It was a rule she wrote into her own bones. And it held her marriage together for longer than most people alive today will ever understand. 25 rules, not one sold in a bottle, not one taught in a classroom, not one required anything that was not already in the house. On your feet. Before dawn. Every single day. These women were not behind. They were so far ahead that we are only now beginning to understand what we lost when we stopped listening to them. And somewhere right now, a woman is setting an alarm for 5:15 in the morning. She is not going to tell anyone why.
Here is the pattern. Every practice in this video shares one quality that no modern product can replicate. They cost nothing, they required no purchase, and they were built on understanding the body rather than buying something to strap onto it. The anchor dress and every trick and rule that followed it belonged to a world where knowledge itself was the product. What vanished from American life was not fashion. It was the confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you are doing and needing nothing from anyone to do it. They did not bury these secrets because they stopped working. They buried them because they worked too well and cost nothing. A woman who knows how to dress herself cannot be sold a thing she does not need. That is the problem they solve by making sure you forgot. Knowledge was always free.